White supremacists have violently opposed every advance toward racial justice and social inclusion in the United States since the Emancipation Proclamation. The violent, racist desecration of the Capitol by unmasked vigilantes during the pandemic on January 6 was no exception. The winning Biden-Harris team readily took the reins, answering the political will of voters to build a more inclusive society. The new administration gives us an opportunity to advance justice and social welfare, but it cannot on its own root out white supremacy and mobilize the diverse U.S. electorate. Dismantling white supremacy and building a broad platform of social policy requires a long view and an understanding of the communities in urban centers, suburban towns and rural counties across our country. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, the Nashville nonviolent movement modeled for the nation a community-centered approach to dismantling Jim Crow. Forged in the momentum of the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, the Nashville movement, with its lunch counter sit-ins, was inspired by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s work in the Montgomery campaign and devised at his behest by the nonviolent movement's chief strategist, the Reverend James M. Lawson Jr. King praised the Nashville movement in 1960 as the best organized and the most disciplined in the Southland. In 1958, Lawson, along with his mentors at the Fellowship of Reconciliation and colleagues at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, established Nashville as the Nonviolence Training Center for the SCLC's multi-city nonviolent campaign to desegregate the South. Nashville was considered an optimal training site because of its soft version of Jim Crow and central location in the South. The Nashville movement would soon transform Nashville into a pulsating hub of social activism that coursed through the networks of the SCLC, Fellowship of Reconciliation, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Congress of Racial Equality, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People throughout the South. Trained by Lawson in nonviolence praxis, a group of Nashville student activists, including Marion Barry, James Bevel, Angeline Butler, Pauline Knight, Bernard Lafayette, John Lewis, Diane Nash, Gloria Johnson Powell and C.T. Vivian, mobilized hundreds of college students to desegregate Nashville and participate in important campaigns throughout the 1960s. The Nashville student leaders participated in the formation of SNCC in 1960, the 1963 Birmingham Campaign, the 1963 March on Washington, the Freedom Summer Campaign of 1964, voting rights actions prior to and involvement in the 1965 Selma Campaign, the Chicago Campaign in 1966, and the Memphis sanitation workers' strike of 1968. The Southern Nonviolent Movement not only dismantled Jim Crow in downtown Nashville by 1962 but, by many accounts, led to the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965.